What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the show. Uh, this is your boy Mahesh. Tonight we're just having a little fun. We're kicking back. We got David Icke on Brian Rose, London Real, doing an interview. And I like David Icke. I've known David Icke for years, since the early 2000s, and there's been a huge backlash against David Icke. David Icke has been considered a conspiracy theorist. David Icke has been considered against the Jews, anti-Semitic. David Icke has been someone who they have made a lot of attempts at censoring. And so, because I watched the way that the establishment went after David Icke, here's this thing about me. I am the type of person that if I see somebody is being shunned, blackballed, uh, censored, or pushed out of the mainstream, I'm gonna go listen to what they have to say because my curiosity kicks in. And I think everyone's curiosity, maybe that's how I was raised, but I think curiosity is a good thing. So I already listened to this before. I'm going to play it right now. I played it already, and everything he's mentioned, you can go look it up. I will put links to all the resources that verifies everything he's saying. He's not saying anything that's woo woo or that's out of the ordinary. It's actually all factual statements, and you can look it up. You can go to all these websites and see published by the very institutions that are controlling your news and the narrative, and see that he has said nothing that was wrong. It's the truth. So the question becomes, what do we as a people want to do about that? We have a choice to make now. Do we want to be a part of the transition and the changes going on in the world today? And if we do, in what capacity do we want to participate? So that's why knowing the reality of what's going on in the world we're living through and the transitions that we're facing is important. So I want you to keep that in mind whenever I share something with you. I'm not sharing it with you for you to feel hopeless or for you to feel like, "Oh, what's the use?" or I'm being negative, because far too often people criticize me and say, "Mahesh, the content you make, it doesn't help anybody, it doesn't do anything, it doesn't." I beg to differ. And the differ is that by awakening people, by making people aware of what's going on, you are empowering people. You are giving people the opportunity to decide at what capacity they want to participate in this world and to what degree they want to withdraw from this world. Because human beings, we have choices to make, we have decisions to make. And the best way to make those decisions and choices is to see the world for what it really is and understand that it just because you may not agree with something or you may not like something going on right now, it does not mean that you have to just kick back, sit back, and not do anything about it. It means that your creativity should kick in. You should become a creative person and you should think to yourself, how can I give back? How can I give back, whether it be in awakening the masses, helping to educate my community, developing techniques for debate, argumentation, philosophy, critical thinking, all these things like that, and trying to inspire the younger crowd to get involved in this type of conversation. Okay, these are all positive things. We need to think about what we say. When we shut people down and tell them that they're being negative, you're actually talking about yourself. You're projecting how you see truth, how you see reality. So everything for you is negative. So therefore, you shout it out your mouth and you put it on someone else. The truth is, let's put all that aside for a second and let's just listen to what someone has to say, someone who you may not like or may not agree with, which in the mainstream, David Icke is not agreed with or liked at all. He's extremely hated. So, with that level of curiosity, let's go in to watch this clip by London Real and hear what David Icke has to say. Um, See for yourself, okay? Now, already up front, I'm telling you, this man is shunned by the entire global community as being a cuckoo, crazy nut job, right? So now that you already know that up front, how about you just watch the video and try to keep a very, try to just listen. And then ask yourself, hmm, is there a way I can verify what he's saying? And I will put links in the video. Let's go ahead and get started.
There's always been morons in politics. I mean, gee whiz. I mean, is that the statement that's most obvious ever spoken? But look at the morons in political positions of political, not real, power around the world.
We both spent a little time close to politics, didn't we?
Well, yeah, but look at Biden. I mean, the man is suffering from dementia. End of frickin' story. Everyone can see it. Elephant in the living room. You look at this guy who imposed fascism on Victoria, Australia, Daniel Andrews. Moron. You look at the people, there was a woman called Kerry Chant in New South Wales, I think it was, who was their chief medical officer. Chief medical officer, you wouldn't let her diagnose acne. Moron. Then you have people like Macron. You have the moron of morons in Canada, Trudeau. And yet, they say this is what's happening, and vast numbers of people do it. Some push back, yes, brilliant. But most people just do it. Oh, they've got to do it because Trudeau's a moron. More than that, the World Economic Forum, by this blatant fascist Klaus Schwab, fronted up by him anyway, they started something called the Young Leaders School to develop leaders to go into positions of power to impose the agenda of the World Economic Forum, which is the agenda of the cult. Some of the names: Justin Trudeau, Jacinda Ardern, who turned New Zealand fascist, Macron, who turned France fascist. On and on it goes. You see these same names. The leader of Argentina is a graduate of the World Economic Forum Young Leaders School. And they're all moronic. Now, this is where the psychology comes in, because it's all a psychological game. They got to control you psychologically, because that controls your perception, which controls your frequency, which controls if you get out here or not. Why do they put so many morons in positions of power? Because if they can get you to see, because it's bloody obvious, that a moron is telling you to do something, and you still do it knowing they're moronic, they got your self-respect. Kaput, finished, over. And once your self-respect is gone, what is left? Submission. That's all.
I had to pause there for a second. Let me cut back real quick. That jumped out at me because I used to have a theory. I remember when I was a kid and I would hear everybody complaining about politics in Trinidad or politics in Venezuela or politics in the United States. And I've been listening to people fight about politics since I was a little boy, right? Since I was young. And it dawned on me what he just said there. I was about 13 or 14 years old when I had this thought. And I said the exact same thing to myself. I said, if they can get the entire planet or humanity to surrender themselves to these moronic who call themselves leaders, then they can get us to submit to anything after that. Because then, and imagine I'm a child and I'm already working through this problem in my head. And I'm asking why do we have leaders in the world that are lacking? Why, when we as a species know that these people are idiots, that they're purposely destroying our countries, that they're purposely destroying our economies, that they're purposely implementing laws and draconian laws and doing all these things around the world and creating wars and all these issues, how is it that the human population in the world does nothing about it or goes along for the ride? Because if they do, then they've proven to the powers that be that we don't need to worry about. They already belong to us. So we don't have to worry about them. And that's a very key point he just pointed out. And when I started talking in my early 20s up until now, I was always talking this way, long before I knew about David Icke. And I always felt like I was the black sheep in my family, in the communities I was involved in, and I would always see things very clearly. When 9/11 happened, I saw it for what it really was. I didn't buy the narrative that was on the TV. I started asking real questions and doing the work, right? So, and I did this for all things that would happen. I would always ask the real questions like why, who, what's the objective, what's the motive, what's the overall outcome, who benefits economically. Those are the questions I used to ask, right? And the people around me would be looking at me like you're a conspiracy theorist, you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. And for a long time I thought I was crazy. In fact, I been to a mental institution because I was gaslit. We live in a world that is quick to throw you under the bus and dismiss you and call you crazy and call you conspiracy theorists because they're asleep. But the beautiful thing about technology is that it has allowed people like us to come together and realize that we are not crazy. We're just awake. And we're living in a world of people who are asleep. And that's okay because we're here for a purpose and we're here for a reason. And whatever, if those around you cannot see that purpose and cannot see that reason and ridicule you and ostracize you or whatever, don't worry about it. There is a higher source in the driver's seat. So let's go ahead and finish up David Icke. It was refreshing to hear this interview with Brian Rose. I may review a couple more sound bites from David Icke because he really gets into stuff that people have been afraid to talk about and have known about, like myself, for years. And now here we are. We got somebody who's voicing it, who's unafraid, and these videos are getting millions and millions of views around the planet. So what does that say? That says that the mainstream is lying. They like to pretend that we are a minority, but in reality, we are the majority because we're awake. It's a beautiful time in human history, and I'm thankful to be a part of it. And you should too. If you're suffering with depression, or you're feeling down, or you're feeling hopeless, don't. We are serving a higher purpose, a higher cause, and that's why we're here. And forget about the body. This will rot, it will leave. So, for the time that you are here in this body, do what you're meant to do. Follow your gift. And stop listening to those around you, the naysayers who are the negative Nancy's, if you want to call it that. The people who gaslight you and make you think you're crazy.
All that remains, submission. And that's why they're after people's self-respect. In all these areas now, they want to make them, and this is why we talked about the first interview we did when lockdown was coming in, that a great consequence of lockdown is going to be economic. It was obvious that it was going to be economic. They were shutting businesses down. Why wouldn't it be? Well, they didn't shut the big businesses down, just the smaller ones and the medium ones. But that was the first shot below the waterline for the world economy, and that's gone on. They're using the global warming hoax to justify the destruction of energy supply. They then have this invasion by Russia of Ukraine, Ukraine being a fundamentally corrupt country, beyond belief corrupt. And the invasion was sanctioned by Vladimir Putin, which, according to Klaus Schwab, Putin is a graduate of the Young Leaders School, according to him in an interview anyway. And so then the West say, we can't have this. It's all a game, it's all theatre. We're putting sanctions against Russia. Yeah, okay. So what sanctions are you going to put in for? Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Oh, right. So what you're doing is you're saying we're going to put sanctions against Russia, but what you're actually doing is sanctioning the West. So suddenly Europe is struggling to provide enough energy. It's going to be catastrophic in the winter. So is America. Once self-sufficient in energy, because of shutting down pipelines and other fossil fuel sources, as Europe has done, there's an energy deficit. And then you've got Russia and China, who are just going along and using fossil fuels like before, with no shutting it down at all, and more coal-fired power stations being produced in China. And what has happened? Systematically, the energy price is going through the roof, and we've seen nothing yet.
Inflation.
Inflation. And another thing about inflation, look at all the fresh air, so-called printed money, based on nothing, that was produced to respond to COVID. As I've said over the years, this agenda is to create a world government, and it would dictate to every community, and we would see the end of countries.
All right, gang. That was David Icke on Brian Rowe's podcast, London Real. He also has courses which I am definitely thinking about taking to improve my my podcasts and my business, and also because I am involved with crypto mining. Please go over and check out my other channel called The Cryptic Hodler, where my partner and I, who own a crypto mining farm, a small one at that, we talk about things from the perspective of what we notice from the investor mindset, and how we look at the world and geopolitics and what's going on, and how we are trying to position ourselves for that transition. Anyway, I hope you like the show tonight. And please try to take into consideration that when you see stuff like this, if this is new for you or jarring or anything like that, don't be afraid. Just take it in, be skeptical if you want, and go do your own research. Go look into the World Economic Forum. Go look into Agenda 2035. Go look into the globalist agenda. Go look into what the layout or the procedural plan is for global warming, Green New Deal, and all these other policies that are being implemented all over the world. Look at what's happening right now globally, and just prepare. Just We all need to start teaching each other how to grow our own food, how to can our food, how to produce our own energy as much as possible, and how to become independent. They're trying to groom us to be dependent on them. And it is upon us to groom ourselves how to be independent of them. Okay? And I think we can coexist. I really do. I really do believe that coexistence is inevitable, and that is going to come. We're not going to stop that. The transition has already begun. The New World Order is in progress. The key is we need to stay uh, vigilant with ourselves and with the powers that be, wherever they are, and figure out a way to bridge that gap where we can contribute as well as they're trying to also contribute, right? And we're going to lock heads at some point, and and we're going to have issues, but that's okay. Okay? I think dialogue, debate, argumentation, critical thinking skills, uh, educating everyone is very important, and that's what we're gonna do. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Have a good night, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.